Arrogant CEO marries. Single mom for inheritance, but falls desperately in love, Part 2. Gabriel's restraint snapped. His mouth crashed down on hers with desperate hunger, 3 weeks of suppressed desire pouring into the kiss. Amara melted against him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal desperation. He tasted like whiskey and want, his lips moving against hers with a passion that made her knees weak. When his tongue swept into her mouth, she moaned softly, pressing closer until there was no space between their bodies. Gabriel's hands tangled in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss. The silk of her negligee provided no barrier against the heat of his body, and she could feel every hard line of him pressed against her curves. One of his hands slid down to span her waist, his thumb brushing the sensitive skin just below her ribs. "God, Amara," he breathed against her lips, "you're destroying me." "Good," she whispered back, nipping at his bottom lip. Gabriel growled low in his throat, his hands sliding down to cup her backside and lift her against him. Amara's legs automatically wrapped around his waist, and the new position brought them into intimate contact that made them both gasp. "Gabriel," she breathed, her head falling back as he pressed hot kisses along her throat. "I know," he said against her skin. "I know, baby. I've wanted this for so long." The endearment sent heat spiraling through her. Gabriel's mouth found the sensitive spot where her neck met her shoulder, and Amara's fingers tightened in his hair as pleasure shot through her. "Please," she whispered, though she wasn't sure what she was asking for. Gabriel seemed to understand anyway. He carried her toward the hallway, his mouth never leaving her skin, their bodies locked together with desperate need. But just as they reached the corridor leading to their bedrooms, a door opened down the hall. "Mom," Tyler's sleepy voice drifted through the darkness. "Is that you? I thought I heard voices." Gabriel and Amara froze, their bodies still intertwined, both breathing hard. The sound of Tyler's bare feet on the hardwood grew closer. "Shit," Gabriel breathed, carefully setting Amara down. "Mom." "Gabriel," Tyler appeared at the end of the hallway, rubbing his eyes. "What are you guys doing?" Amara's mind went completely blank. She was standing in the hallway in a negligee, her lips swollen from Gabriel's kisses, her hair mussed from his hands. Gabriel looked equally disheveled, his shirt wrinkled and his mouth dark from their passionate encounter. "Tyler, sweetheart," she managed, her voice only slightly unsteady. "What are you doing home? Is everything okay?" "Jake got sick, so his mom brought me home. Mrs. Margot let me in and said you guys were still up." Tyler's innocent gaze moved between them, taking in their rumpled appearances. "Were you fighting again? You both look upset." Gabriel recovered first, running a hand through his hair to smooth it. "We were just talking about grown-up things." "Oh," Tyler nodded seriously. "Are you going to be okay? You both look really red." Amara felt heat flood her cheeks, aware that her lips were probably swollen and her negligee was twisted from Gabriel's hands. "We're fine, baby. Just tired." "Okay." Tyler yawned hugely. "Can I get some water? And maybe talk to you about something?" "Of course." Amara glanced at Gabriel, seeing her own frustration and disappointment reflected in his eyes. "Let's get you settled." As they headed toward the kitchen, Tyler chattering about his abbreviated sleepover, Amara was acutely aware of Gabriel behind her. She could feel his gaze on her, could sense the tension radiating from his body as he fought to return to normal after what had almost happened between them. Tyler got his water and launched into a detailed account of his evening, seemingly oblivious to the charged atmosphere between the adults. Gabriel listened with his usual attention, asking appropriate questions, but Amara could see the strain in his posture, the way his hands remained carefully clasped behind his back. "Can Gabriel help me with my chest tomorrow?" Tyler asked as Amara walked him back to his room. "I've been practicing the moves he showed me, and I think I'm getting better." "If Gabriel has time," Amara said, acutely aware of Gabriel following them down the hall. "I'll make time," Gabriel said quietly. "Chess is important." Tyler beamed as Amara tucked him back into bed, chattering about strategy and peace movements until his eyes grew heavy. By the time she turned off his light and closed his door, Gabriel had disappeared. She found him in the kitchen, standing with his back to her, his hands braced against the counter. The tension in his shoulders was visible even from across the room. "Gabriel? Go to bed, Amara." His voice was controlled, but she could hear the strain underneath. "We should talk about what just happened." Gabriel turned to face her, and the careful blankness in his expression made her chest ache. Tyler coming home was a reminder of what's really important here, his stability, his security, not whatever this is between us. This isn't nothing. It can't be something. Gabriel's voice was final, absolute. Not if we want to protect what we've built for him. The dismissal hurt more than it should have. Amara wanted to argue, wanted to point out that Tyler seemed happier and more secure than he'd ever been, that their growing connection had only strengthened their family dynamic. But Gabriel had already retreated behind his walls, and she could see there was no reaching him there. "Fine," she said quietly. "If that's how you want it. It's how it has to be." Gabriel brushed past her toward his study, careful not to touch her. At the doorway, he paused without turning around. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "that wasn't a mistake for me. But it can't happen again." The door closed behind him with quiet finality, leaving Amara alone in the kitchen with the taste of him still on her lips and the memory of his hands burning against her skin. Chapter 2. The next morning arrived with painful brightness streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Amara had managed maybe 2 hours of restless sleep, her body still humming with unfulfilled desire, and her mind replaying every moment of Gabriel's mouth on hers. She could still feel the ghost of his hands spanning her waist, the way he'd growled her name against her throat like a man drowning. She found Tyler in the kitchen with Mrs. Margot, already dressed for school and animated about his chess lesson with Gabriel. The normalcy of the scene felt surreal after the intensity of the night before. "Morning, Mom." Tyler looked up from his cereal with a bright smile. "Gabriel said he'd work on endgame strategies with me after school. Mrs. Margot made pancakes too, but I already ate mine." "That's nice, baby." Amara's voice came out rougher than intended, and she cleared her throat, hyper-aware of Mrs. Margot's knowing glance. "Mr. Gabriel left early for the office," the housekeeper said smoothly, pouring Amara coffee without being asked. "Said he had an important board meeting to prepare for." Of course he did. Gabriel was running, putting distance between them after last night's explosion of passion. Amara couldn't blame him. She was tempted to do the same thing. "Will you be okay getting to your new job today, dear?" Mrs. Margot asked gently. "Mr. Gabriel arranged for the driver to take you, but I wanted to make sure you were comfortable with the arrangements." Right. Today was her first day at the Riverside Charter School, developing early intervention programs for at-risk children. In all the chaos of their passionate encounter and Tyler's unexpected return, she'd almost forgotten about the career opportunity Gabriel had found for her. "I'll be fine," Amara said, though she wasn't sure anything would be fine again after last night. Tyler finished his breakfast and gathered his backpack, chattering about his new friends at Whitmore Academy and the science project he was working on. The easy happiness in his voice reminded Amara why she'd agreed to this arrangement in the first place. Tyler was thriving in ways she'd never been able to provide on her own. After Tyler left for school, Amara stood in the vast penthouse, feeling lost. The elegant space felt different now, charged with memories of Gabriel's hands in her hair, his body pressed against hers with desperate need. Every surface seemed to hold echoes of their passion, the sofa where he'd been drinking, the hallway where he'd carried her, the kitchen counter where he'd tried to regain his composure afterward. She needed to focus on something else, anything else, before she drove herself crazy. The Riverside Charter School occupied a converted brownstone in a neighborhood that reminded Amara of her old life. Working families, corner stores, with hand-painted signs, children walking to school in groups. The familiar sights eased some of the tension in her chest as she made her way to the front entrance. Dr. Sarah Sims, the principal, greeted her with genuine warmth and enthusiasm about the early intervention program Amara would be developing. As they toured the facility, discussing curriculum development and resource allocation, Amara felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with Gabriel's arrangement and everything to do with work she was genuinely passionate about. The children we serve come from families dealing with poverty, language barriers, unstable housing, Dr. Sims explained as they observed a kindergarten class in session. Early intervention can literally change the trajectory of their entire lives. Amara watched a little girl with Tyler's serious expression struggle with letter recognition, her heart clenching with recognition. What kind of support systems are currently in place? Not nearly enough. That's why we're so excited about your program. Gabriel spoke very highly of your vision for integrated support services. The mention of Gabriel's name sent heat spiraling through Amara's chest. Even here, surrounded by the work she loved, she couldn't escape the memory of his mouth on hers, the way he'd said her name like a prayer. He's been very supportive of my career goals, Amara managed, hoping her voice sounded more professional than she felt. Dr. Sims's smile suggested she knew there was more to the story. He seemed quite invested in making sure you had everything you needed to succeed here. It's refreshing to see such a supportive partnership. Partnership. If only Dr. Sims knew how complicated their partnership had become. Amara threw herself into the work, meeting with teachers and reviewing assessment data, grateful for the distraction. But even as she discussed reading intervention strategies and family engagement protocols, part of her mind remained fixed on Gabriel. Was he thinking about last night? Was he regretting the way he'd pulled back? Or was he relieved that Tyler's interruption had saved them from making an irreversible mistake? By the time she returned to the penthouse that afternoon, her professional confidence had been somewhat restored. She could do this, maintain their arrangement, focus on Tyler's well-being, and ignore the fire burning between her and Gabriel. Then she walked into the living room and found Gabriel on the floor with Tyler, a chessboard between them, and all her careful resolve crumbled. Gabriel had changed out of his business suit into dark jeans and a gray sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and when he looked up at her entrance, the heat that flashed in his eyes made her breath catch. "Mom!" Tyler jumped up, abandoning the chess game to hug her. "Gabriel's teaching me the Sicilian defense. It's complicated, but I think I'm getting it." "That's wonderful, baby." Amara kept her voice steady, despite the way Gabriel's gaze was traveling over her body, taking in her professional attire with obvious appreciation. "How was your first day?" Gabriel asked, rising fluidly to his feet. The simple question was loaded with undercurrents that had nothing to do with work and everything to do with the way his mouth had tasted last night. "Good. Really good, actually." Amara set down her purse, acutely aware of Gabriel's presence across the room. Dr. Sims was very welcoming, and the program has incredible potential. "I'm glad." Gabriel's voice was carefully neutral, but she could see tension in the set of his shoulders. "Tyler was just telling me about his science project. Apparently he needs help building a volcano." "It has to erupt and everything," Tyler said excitedly. "Can we work on it this weekend?" Gabriel said he might know where to get the good chemicals. The casual way Tyler included Gabriel in their weekend plans made Amara's chest tight. Her son had never had a father figure, had never expected male participation in school projects or weekend activities. Now he took Gabriel's presence for granted, assumed his involvement in ways that were both touching and terrifying. "If Gabriel has time," Amara said carefully. "I'll make time," Gabriel replied, echoing his words from the night before. His gaze met hers across the room, and for a moment the air between them crackled with the same electricity that had led to their explosive encounter. Mrs. Margot appeared from the kitchen, breaking the tension. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Tyler, you should wash up." As Tyler headed toward his room, chattering about chemical reactions and lava flow, Amara found herself alone with Gabriel for the first time since their passionate kiss. The silence stretched between them, loaded with everything they weren't saying. "How was your board meeting?" she asked finally. Gabriel's smile was rueful. "Pierce is pushing for another vote of no confidence. He's convinced half the board that my personal life is affecting my judgment." "Is it?" The question slipped out before Amara could stop it. Gabriel's eyes darkened, his gaze dropping to her lips with unmistakable hunger. "Yes," he said quietly, "but not in the way Pierce thinks." The admission hung between them like a live wire. Amara took a step closer, drawn by the heat in Gabriel's eyes despite every rational thought screaming at her to maintain distance. "Gabriel, don't." His voice was strained. "Please, Amara, I'm barely holding on as it is." "Maybe you should stop trying to hold on." Gabriel's hands clenched at his sides. "Tyler is happier than he's ever been. We're not destroying his security, Gabriel. We're building something real." "This isn't real." But Gabriel's voice lacked conviction, and his gaze remained fixed on her mouth. "This is just proximity and circumstance, and—" Amara closed the distance between them, placing her hand flat against his chest. Gabriel's heart was racing beneath her palm, his breath coming faster as she looked up at him with open desire. "This feels pretty real to me," she said softly. Gabriel's control wavered visibly. His hand came up to cover hers, his thumb tracing over her knuckles with devastating gentleness. "If we do this," he said, his voice rough, "there's no going back. No pretending it's just an arrangement. I don't want to go back." The words were barely a whisper, but they shattered Gabriel's remaining resistance. His free hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing her lower lip with reverent touch. "You're killing me," he said against her mouth. "Good," Amara breathed, rising on her toes to close the distance between them. Gabriel's mouth crashed down on hers with desperate hunger, picking up exactly where they'd left off the night before. Amara melted against him, her hands fisting in his sweater as he kissed her with passion that made her knees weak. "Mom? Gabriel?" Tyler's voice drifted from his room. "Can you help me find my chemistry book?" They sprang apart, both breathing hard. "I'll go," Amara said, her voice unsteady. "No." Gabriel's hand caught her wrist, his touch burning against her skin. "I'll help him. You should get ready for dinner." But he made no move to release her, his thumb tracing circles against her pulse point. The simple touch sent heat racing through her entire body, and from the way Gabriel's breathing hitched, he could feel her response. "Gabriel," she whispered, "I know." His voice was rough with desire. "God, Amara, I know." Tyler's voice called again, more insistent this time, and Gabriel finally released her with visible effort, but as he headed toward Tyler's room, he paused at her shoulder. "This conversation isn't over," he said quietly, his breath warm against her ear. The promise sent shivers racing down her spine. As Gabriel disappeared down the hallway, Amara pressed her back against the wall, trying to steady her racing pulse. Whatever was building between them was getting stronger, more impossible to resist with each passing moment. She could hear Gabriel's voice from Tyler's room, patient and warm as he helped search for the missing book. The domestic sound should have been reassuring, but instead it reminded her of everything she stood to lose if this went wrong. Gabriel was right. If they crossed this line, there would be no going back. But as Amara made her way to her bedroom to change for dinner, she realized she was past caring about the consequences. The fire between them was too strong, too real to keep fighting. The question was no longer whether they would give in to the passion consuming them both. The question was when, and whether they'd be strong enough to handle whatever came after. Have you ever found yourself caught between what your heart wants and what seems safe? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I love hearing about your own experiences with these impossible choices. Dinner was an exercise in exquisite torture. They sat at the elegant dining table like a normal family, Tyler chattering about his day, while Mrs. Margot served perfectly prepared salmon and roasted vegetables. But beneath the surface, electricity crackled between Gabriel and Amara with every accidental touch, every shared glance, every moment when their eyes met across the table. Gabriel's fingers brushed hers when he passed the salt. Amara's hand lingered on his shoulder when she reached for her water glass. Small touches that would mean nothing to an observer, but felt like fire to both of them. Tyler, oblivious to the tension, dominated the conversation with stories about his new friends and excited plans for the weekend volcano project. Gabriel listened with his usual attention, asking thoughtful questions and offering suggestions. But Amara could see the strain in his posture, the way his knuckles went white when she laughed at something Tyler said. "Can we work on the volcano tomorrow night?" Tyler asked as Mrs. Margot served dessert. "I want to have the coolest eruption in the whole class." We'll make sure you do, Gabriel promised, his voice warm despite the tension radiating from his body. And maybe we can watch a movie after? Mom always picks boring grown-up movies, but you might pick something good. Hey, Amara protested with mock indignation, my movies are educational. Exactly, Tyler said, making Gabriel laugh despite himself. The sound of Gabriel's genuine laughter made Amara's chest tight with emotion. This was what she'd never been able to give Tyler, a father figure who took genuine interest in his projects, who listened to his stories, who made him feel important and heard. Gabriel wasn't just fulfilling the financial obligations of their arrangement. He was filling emotional needs Amara hadn't even realized Tyler had. After dinner, Tyler settled in the living room with his homework while Gabriel retreated to his study for business calls. Amara helped Mrs. Margot clean up, grateful for the domestic routine that kept her hands busy, even if it couldn't quiet her racing thoughts. He's a good man, Mrs. Margot said quietly as they loaded the dishwasher. I'm sorry. Mr. Gabriel, he's a good man. He just needs someone to remind him of that. Amara's hands stilled on the plates she was rinsing. Mrs. Margot, I've worked for this family for 15 years, the older woman continued gently. I watched Mr. Gabriel grow up, watched him build walls to protect himself after his mother died. But these past few weeks since you and Tyler arrived, I've seen glimpses of the boy he used to be. The observation hit too close to home. It's complicated. The best things usually are. Mrs. Margot's smile was knowing. But complications don't make something wrong, dear. Sometimes they just make it worth fighting for. As if summoned by their conversation, Gabriel appeared in the kitchen doorway. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and the casual dishevelment made Amara's pulse quicken. Tyler's finished his homework, he said, his gaze finding Amara's across the room. He wanted to know if you'd tuck him in tonight. Of course. Amara dried her hands, acutely aware of Gabriel's attention. I'll be right there. But as she moved toward the doorway, Gabriel stepped into her path. They stood inches apart, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes, could smell the subtle cologne that made her think of their passionate kiss the night before. After Tyler's asleep, Gabriel said quietly, his voice rough with promise, we need to finish what we started. The words sent heat spiraling through her entire body. Amara nodded, not trusting her voice, and Gabriel stepped aside to let her pass. But as she moved by him, his hand brushed the small of her back, a touch so brief it could have been accidental, but the heat in his eyes told her it was anything but. Tyler was already in his pajamas when she reached his room, his face bright with contentment as he climbed into bed. I really like it here, Mom, he said as she pulled up his covers. I like Gabriel, and Mrs. Margot makes the best food, and my new school is awesome. I'm glad, baby. You deserve to be happy. Tyler was quiet for a moment, his expression growing serious. Are you happy too, Mom? The question caught her off guard. What do you mean? I don't know. You seem different since we moved here. Not bad different, just, I don't know, more relaxed, I guess, and you smile more when Gabriel's around. The innocent observation made Amara's chest tight. Even Tyler could see the change in her, the way Gabriel's presence affected her in ways that had nothing to do with their arrangement and everything to do with the man himself. I'm happier than I've been in a long time, she said honestly. Tyler smiled sleepily. Good. You deserve to be happy too, Mom. You take care of everyone else all the time. Someone should take care of you. The words were wise beyond Tyler's years, and they hit Amara like a revelation. For so long, she'd defined herself entirely through her role as Tyler's mother, as someone who provided and protected and sacrificed. She'd forgotten that she was also a woman with her own needs, her own desires, her own right to happiness. I love you, Tyler, she said, kissing his forehead. Love you too, Mom, and I love Gabriel too. Is that okay? The question made tears prick her eyes. That's more than okay, baby. That's perfect. As Tyler drifted off to sleep, Amara sat beside his bed, watching his peaceful face in the dim light. Her son was safe, secure, surrounded by opportunities she'd never dreamed of providing. Whatever happened between her and Gabriel, Tyler would be protected. The trust fund guaranteed his future, regardless of how their marriage ended. That knowledge should have been freeing, but instead, It terrified her. Because it meant the only thing stopping her from pursuing Gabriel was her own fear. Fear of getting hurt, fear of wanting too much, fear of discovering that what felt like love might just be gratitude and proximity. But as she made her way back to the living room, her pulse quickening with each step, Amara realized she was past caring about fear. Gabriel was waiting for her with heat in his eyes and promises in his voice, and she was done fighting the fire burning between them. Whatever happened next, she was ready to find out. Chapter 3. Amara found Gabriel in his study, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows with his back to the door. The city lights stretched out below him like a carpet of stars, but his attention seemed focused inward, his shoulders tense with the weight of unspoken desires. "Tyler's asleep," she said softly, closing the door behind her. Gabriel turned slowly, and the heat in his eyes made her breath catch. He'd removed his tie completely, and his white shirt was open at the collar, revealing the strong column of his throat. The sight of him, rumpled, vulnerable, devastatingly attractive, made her pulse race. "Good," he said, his voice rough. "We need to talk." "Do we?" Amara stepped into the room, drawn by the magnetic pull that had been building between them for weeks. "Because I'm not sure talking is what either of us wants right now." Gabriel's hands clenched at his sides. "Amara, you need to understand what you're asking for. If we cross this line—" "We already crossed it." She moved closer, close enough to see the gold flecks in his eyes, to feel the heat radiating from his body. "The moment you kissed me last night, we crossed it. The moment you told me this conversation wasn't over, we crossed it. We're just pretending we haven't." Gabriel's eyes fluttered closed at her touch, his breath coming faster. "You don't understand. If this goes wrong, if we destroy what we've built for Tyler—" "Look at me," Amara said firmly. Gabriel's eyes opened, meeting hers with desperate intensity. "Tyler's the happiest he's ever been," she said quietly. "He has security, opportunity, and for the first time in his life, a father figure who genuinely cares about him. Nothing we do is going to change that. The trust fund protects his future, regardless of what happens between us." "And what about you?" Gabriel's voice was strained. "What if this ruins everything for you?" The vulnerability in his question made her chest ache. "Gabriel, what if it doesn't? What if your father was right and this is exactly what we're supposed to find?" Before Gabriel could respond, his phone buzzed against his desk. He glanced at it with a frown, then picked it up. "Elena." His voice shifted to concern. "Is everything all right?" Amara watched as Gabriel listened to his stepmother, his expression growing increasingly troubled. Finally, he set the phone down and ran a hand through his hair. "Elena wants to have dinner tomorrow night," he said. "She has something important to discuss about Richard's final letters." "Final letters?" "Apparently, Richard left sealed letters for both of us. Elena's been waiting for the right time to share them." Gabriel's gaze met Amara's, and she could see uncertainty warring with desire in his expression. "She thinks now is that time." The interruption felt like cold water on the fire burning between them. Amara stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they'd been standing, how ready she'd been to surrender to the passion consuming them both. "I should go," she said quietly. "Amara." "No, you're right. We should wait. Until we know what Richard wanted us to understand." She moved toward the door, but Gabriel's voice stopped her. "When we finally stop fighting this," he said, his voice intense, "I want there to be no doubts, no regrets, no questions about what we're building together." The promise in his words sent heat spiraling through her. "And after tomorrow," Gabriel smiled, full of intent. "After tomorrow, we stop pretending this is just an arrangement." Elena Ashworth's Beacon Hill townhouse was exactly what Amara had expected. Elegant without being ostentatious, filled with art and antiques that spoke of old money and refined taste. But what surprised her was the warmth of the space, the lived-in comfort that made it feel like a home rather than a museum. "Amara, dear, you look lovely," Elena said, embracing her warmly at the door. She was dressed in soft blue cashmere, her silver hair styled in an elegant chignon, but her eyes held the same intelligence that had made her such a formidable match for Richard. "Thank you for having us," Amara replied, acutely aware of Gabriel's presence behind her. He'd been quiet during the drive over, tension radiating from his body in waves. Tyler bounced beside them, excited about visiting what he called Gabriel's other house. Elena had specifically requested his presence, saying that Richard's letters concerned all of them. The dining room was intimate and warm, with candles flickering on a table set for 4. Elena had prepared Tyler's favorite foods, information she could only have obtained from Gabriel, and the boy chatted happily throughout the meal about school, chess, and his upcoming volcano project. "Gabriel tells me you're quite the strategist," Elena said to Tyler as they finished their main course. "Your mother mentioned you beat Mr. Richard regularly at chess." Tyler's chest puffed with pride. "Mom taught me that chess is like life. You have to think ahead and protect the people you care about." "Wise words," Elena said, her gaze moving meaningfully between Gabriel and Amara. "Sometimes the best moves require courage, even when they seem risky." After dinner, Elena settled Tyler in the living room with a book about famous chess matches, then led Gabriel and Amara to Richard's old study. The room was exactly as he'd left it: massive mahogany desk, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and the faint scent of his pipe tobacco still lingering in the air. Elena moved to the desk and withdrew 2 sealed envelopes, each marked with familiar handwriting. "Richard wrote these during his final weeks," she said softly. "He made me promise to give them to you when the time was right." Gabriel's jaw was tight as he accepted his envelope, his fingers tracing his name written in his father's careful script. Amara's hands trembled slightly as Elena placed her letter in her palm. "Should we read them now?" Amara asked. "Richard hoped you would," Elena said. "Together." Gabriel broke the seal on his envelope first, unfolding the cream-colored paper carefully. As his eyes moved over the words, Amara watched his expression shift from wariness to surprise to something that might have been grief. "What does it say?" she asked softly. Gabriel's voice was rough when he began to read aloud. "My dear Gabriel, if you're reading this, then my final gambit has begun. By now you've met Amara properly, and I hope you're beginning to understand why I orchestrated your marriage. She is everything your mother would have wanted in a daughter-in-law: strong, compassionate, fiercely protective of those she loves, but more than that, she's exactly what you need, though you're probably too stubborn to see it yet. I know you believe I betrayed your mother's memory by marrying Elena. The truth is, your mother made me promise to find love again. She worried that grief would consume me, that I'd become bitter and alone. Elena saved me from that fate, just as I hope Amara might save you from the isolation you've chosen. You've spent 15 years punishing yourself for not being present when your mother died, building walls to ensure you'd never experience that kind of loss again. But love isn't about avoiding pain, son. It's about finding someone worth risking everything for. I found that twice in my lifetime, with your mother and with Elena. I pray you'll find the courage to accept the gift I've tried to give you with Amara." Gabriel's voice broke on the last words, and Amara felt tears pricking her own eyes. She reached for his hand, and Gabriel gripped her fingers like a lifeline. "There's more," he said, his voice strained. "About you." He continued reading. "Amara, by the time Gabriel reads this to you, you'll understand that this marriage was never just about saving my company or securing Tyler's future, though both were important considerations. I've watched you for 8 years, seen the way you love Tyler with everything you have while never asking for anything in return. You deserve someone who will love you with that same fierce devotion. I saw the way Gabriel looked at you the day he visited the cafe 6 months ago. He watched you serve customers with such attention that he forgot why he'd come to see me. When I mentioned your name afterwards, his entire demeanor changed. I knew then that you were exactly what my stubborn son needed, someone worth fighting for, someone worth changing for. You're both too proud, too wounded, too afraid of risking your hearts again. But some things are worth the risk. Tyler needs a father figure, Gabriel needs a family, and both of you need to remember that love isn't a weakness. It's the greatest strength any of us can possess." Gabriel folded the letter carefully, his hands not quite steady. The silence in the study was deafening. "Gabriel," Amara whispered, her letter still unopened in her lap. "He planned all of this. Gabriel said, his voice wondering. Every detail to bring us together. Read yours, Elena said gently to Amara. Richard wanted you both to understand the full picture. Amara's hands shook as she opened her envelope. My dear Amara, you've been the daughter I never had, the bright spot in an old man's lonely afternoons. Watching you struggle to provide for Tyler while maintaining your dignity and grace has been both heartbreaking and inspiring. You deserve so much more than the hand life has dealt you. Gabriel is a good man, but he's forgotten how to let people love him. He needs someone who will see past his wealth and status to the lonely boy who never properly grieved his mother. He needs someone who will fight for him, even when he's too stubborn to fight for himself. I'm giving you both the greatest gift I can, each other. Don't waste it on pride or fear. Tyler deserves to see his mother truly happy, and Gabriel deserves to remember what it means to be part of a real family. The choice is yours, but I hope you'll choose love. It's the only thing that matters in the end. With all my affection, Richard. Amara lowered the letter with trembling hands, tears streaming down her cheeks. Gabriel was staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. He saw it before we did, Gabriel said quietly. What was possible between us? He saw two people too scared to reach for what they wanted, Elena added softly. Two people who needed someone they trusted to give them permission to take the risk. Amara looked at Gabriel, seeing past the businessman to the man Richard had described, wounded, lonely, desperately in need of connection but terrified to seek it, and she saw herself reflected in his eyes, someone who'd been so focused on survival that she'd forgotten she deserved happiness too. Gabriel, she began, but he was already moving toward her. Gabriel's thumb traced her cheekbone gently, wiping away tears she didn't realize were falling. I'm terrified, he admitted. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up, that I'll hurt you or Tyler, that I'll lose the best thing that's ever happened to me. Then we'll be terrified together, Amara said, rising on her toes to close the distance between them. Because I'm scared too. Scared that this is too good to be true, scared that I'll wake up and find out I don't deserve this kind of happiness. You deserve everything, Gabriel said fiercely. You deserve the world, Amara. He kissed her. Then, soft and sweet and full of promise. Two people finally acknowledging what they meant to each other. What would you do if you discovered someone had orchestrated the greatest gift of your life? Share your thoughts about Richard's final letters in the comments below. I love hearing your perspectives on these profound moments of truth. Elena cleared her throat delicately from across the room, reminding them they weren't alone. Perhaps we should rejoin Tyler, she suggested with obvious amusement. Gabriel and Amara broke apart, but Gabriel kept his arm around her waist, unwilling to let her go completely. Thank you, he said to Elena, his voice thick with emotion, for waiting until we were ready to hear this. Your father knew what he was doing, Elena replied. He always did, especially when it came to matters of the heart. They found Tyler curled up on Elena's sofa, fast asleep with the chessbook open across his chest. Gabriel lifted him carefully, and Amara watched the tender way he adjusted Tyler's position, protecting his head and making sure he was comfortable. He's going to be so excited about having a real dad, Elena said softly, following Amara's gaze. He already does, Amara realized. Gabriel's been his father in every way that matters for weeks now. We were just too scared to call it what it was. The ride home was quiet. Tyler sleeping in the back seat while Gabriel and Amara sat in charged silence. The letters had changed everything, had given them permission to want what they'd been fighting since the beginning. When we get home, Gabriel said quietly, we need to talk. About what this means, about what we want. I know what I want, Amara said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. Gabriel's hand found hers in the darkness of the car. So do I. As the city lights blurred past the windows, Amara thought about Richard's final gift, not just the money or the security, but the chance to love and be loved completely. He'd seen what they were too afraid to acknowledge, had orchestrated circumstances that forced them to see each other clearly. Now all they had to do was find the courage to embrace what he'd given them. Tonight, Amara thought, as Gabriel's thumb traced circles against her palm, they would finally stop running from their hearts. Chapter 4. The emergency board meeting was called for 8 o'clock the next morning, barely 12 hours after Gabriel and Amara had returned from Elena's house with Richard's letters burning in their minds and a new understanding blazing between them. Gabriel sat at the head of the mahogany conference table in the Ashworth Enterprises boardroom, his expression controlled despite the fury building in his chest. Jonathan Pierce had orchestrated this ambush with military precision. Half the board members looked uncomfortable, the other half hungry for drama. Only Charles Pemberton, whom they'd met at the charity gala, offered Gabriel a sympathetic nod. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Pierce began, his voice carrying false sincerity. "I've called this meeting because disturbing information has come to my attention regarding Gabriel's recent marriage and its potential impact on company stability." Gabriel's hands remained steady on the table, but every muscle in his body was coiled for battle. "What information would that be, Pierce?" Pierce's smile was razor-sharp as he opened a manila folder. "It seems your marriage to Miss Lewis, Mrs. Ashworth, was conducted with suspicious haste. A civil ceremony just weeks after your father's death, followed by immediate changes to the company's controlling interests." "The marriage was conducted according to Richard's will," Gabriel said evenly. "Everything was done legally and transparently." "Was it?" Pierce leaned forward like a predator scenting blood. "Because my sources suggest this entire arrangement was designed to circumvent the natural succession of company leadership. A sham marriage created solely to maintain control." The accusation hung in the air like poison. Gabriel felt his careful control beginning to fray, but before he could respond, the boardroom door opened. Amara walked in wearing a sleek white pantsuit that emphasized her natural elegance, her chin raised with quiet dignity. Gabriel's breath caught at the sight of her, beautiful, strong, magnificent in her determination to stand beside him. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said calmly, taking the empty chair beside Gabriel with a confidence that came from knowing exactly where she belonged. Traffic was heavier than expected. Pierce's eyes narrowed with obvious displeasure. "Mrs. Ashworth, this is a private board meeting." "Actually, as Gabriel's wife and a significant beneficiary of Richard's estate, I have every right to be here," Amara said smoothly, "especially when the topic of discussion is my marriage." Gabriel felt something fierce and protective surge through his chest. Amara had come to fight for them, for their family, for everything they'd built together. "Of course," Pierce said through gritted teeth. "How convenient that you're here to address these concerns directly." "What concerns would those be?" Amara's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Pierce shuffled his papers with a dramatic flourish. "Concerns about the authenticity of your relationship with Gabriel. Concerns about whether this marriage was entered into for financial gain." The insult hit its mark, but instead of backing down, Amara leaned forward with the kind of calm that made Gabriel's pulse race. "Mr. Pierce," she said quietly, "I'm going to explain something to you once, and I suggest you listen carefully." The boardroom went dead silent. Even Pierce seemed taken aback by the authority in her voice. "I married Gabriel Ashworth not for money, not for status, not for any reason that would satisfy your small mind's need for conspiracy." Amara's gaze swept the room, commanding attention from every person present. "I married him because he's the man who carries my sleeping son to bed with infinite gentleness, because he listens to 10-year-old stories like they're the most important things in the world and has spent his life looking after everyone but himself." Gabriel's chest tightened with emotion as Amara continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You want to question the authenticity of our relationship? Then let me tell you what real love looks like. It looks like Gabriel spending his Saturday afternoon helping Tyler build a volcano for a science project. It looks like him knowing exactly how Tyler likes his pancakes and remembering to ask about his chess games. It looks like a man who's been afraid of losing people he loves that he spent 15 years alone rather than risk his heart again." Pierce's face had gone red with frustrated anger. "Mrs. Ashworth, these emotional appeals are all very touching, but they don't address the fundamental question." "The fundamental question," Amara cut him off, "is whether you're going to continue insulting my marriage and my family or whether we can get back to actual business matters." Gabriel couldn't stay silent any longer. The woman beside him had just defended their relationship with more passion and eloquence than any lawyer could muster, and his heart was so full of love and admiration he could barely breathe. "She's right," he said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "This meeting is a waste of everyone's time, Pierce. My marriage is legal, legitimate, and none of your damn business. The board is justified in being concerned when personal matters begin to interfere with company judgment and decision-making. My personal life enhances my professional capabilities," Gabriel said coldly. "But since you seem so concerned about company stability, let's discuss your real agenda here." Gabriel stood, moving to the presentation screen at the front of the room. With practiced efficiency, he pulled up financial projections and market analysis that he'd been preparing for weeks. "Pierce has been positioning himself for a hostile takeover for months," Gabriel said, his voice cutting through the room like a blade. "He's been spreading rumors about company instability while quietly approaching our major clients with promises of better deals under new leadership." Murmurs rippled through the boardroom as board members began to understand the true nature of Pierce's attack. "Furthermore," Gabriel continued, "Pierce's own financial dealings show leveraged buyouts that have gutted 3 companies in the past 5 years. His interest in Ashworth Enterprises has nothing to do with stability and everything to do with asset stripping." Pierce's face had gone white with rage. "That's a serious accusation, Ashworth. It's a factual statement backed by public records." Gabriel's smile was cold as winter. "Records that I'm happy to share with anyone interested in the truth." The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely. Board members who'd seemed sympathetic to Pierce's arguments were now looking at him with suspicion and distaste. Charles Pemberton cleared his throat diplomatically. "It seems to me that Gabriel's personal life is exactly that, personal. His professional decision-making has been exemplary. Company profits are at an all-time high, and this attempted character assassination reflects more poorly on its orchestrator than its target." Nods of agreement rippled around the table. Pierce's carefully planned attack was crumbling before his eyes. "I move that we table this discussion indefinitely," another board member said. "We have actual business to conduct." The motion was seconded and carried with overwhelming support. Pierce gathered his papers with jerky, angry movements, his face twisted with frustrated rage. "This isn't over, Gabriel," he said as he headed for the door. "Yes, it is," Gabriel replied calmly. "And Pierce, if you ever insult my wife again, we'll be having a very different kind of conversation." The threat was delivered with restraint, but deadly serious. Pierce's exit was followed by an uncomfortable silence that Charles finally broke. "Well then," he said with obvious relief, "shall we move on to the quarterly reports?" As the meeting shifted to actual business matters, Gabriel found his attention drawn repeatedly to Amara beside him. She participated in discussions with the kind of intelligent insight that made it clear she belonged at this table, that her presence enhanced rather than diminished the proceedings. When the meeting finally adjourned, board members approached them both with congratulations and genuine warmth. Word of Pierce's defeat would spread quickly through the financial community, effectively ending his threat to the company. "That was incredible," Gabriel said as they waited for the elevator. "The way you stood up to Pierce, the way you defended us." "I was defending my family," Amara said simply. "My husband, my son, our life together. Pierce was threatening that, so I fought back." The words hit Gabriel like a physical blow. Husband, family, our life together. She'd claimed him completely, publicly, with a fierce protectiveness that made his chest ache with love. "Amara," he began, but the elevator arrived, filled with other executives from the meeting. The ride down was an exercise in torture. Gabriel stood behind Amara, close enough to catch the scent of her perfume, close enough to see the elegant line of her neck above her suit collar. Her defense of their marriage had been the most arousing thing he had ever witnessed, and his body was responding accordingly. By the time they reached the parking garage, Gabriel's control was hanging by a thread. "We need to talk," he said as they approached his car. "Yes, we do." Amara turned to face him, and the heat in her eyes nearly brought him to his knees. "But not here." The drive back to the penthouse was charged with electricity. Every red light felt like torture. Every turn brought them closer to the conversation they'd been building toward since their wedding night. "Tyler's at school," Amara said quietly as they entered the penthouse. "Yes," Gabriel agreed, his voice rough. "Mrs. Margot is at the market." "Yes." They stood in the foyer, still in their business clothes, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Gabriel's tie felt too tight, his shirt too confining. Amara's professional composure was intact, but he could see the rapid pulse at her throat, the way her hands trembled slightly as she set down her purse. "What you did in that boardroom," Gabriel said finally. "I've never seen anything more beautiful than you standing up to Pierce, claiming me as your husband like you meant it." "I did mean it." Amara stepped closer, close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her dark eyes. Every word. Gabriel's backed her against the wall, his hands braced on either side of her head, his body caging her in without quite touching. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" he asked, his voice rough with desire. "The same thing you're doing to me," she whispered back. The words shattered Gabriel's remaining restraint. His mouth crashed down on hers with desperate hunger, months of suppressed desire pouring into the kiss. Amara melted against him, her hands fisting in his suit jacket as she kissed him back with equal passion. "Have you ever had someone defend you so fiercely that it changed everything between you? Tell us about the moment you knew someone was truly in your corner. These stories of loyalty and love inspire our community." Gabriel's hands tangled in her hair, angling her head to deepen the kiss. She tasted like coffee and determination, like everything he'd been missing without knowing it. When her tongue swept into his mouth, he groaned against her lips, pressing closer until there was no space between their bodies. "Amara," he breathed against her mouth. "God, I need you." "Then take me," she whispered back, her hands already working at his tie. Gabriel lifted her against the wall, her legs wrapping around his waist as he carried her toward the bedroom. Every step was torture and anticipation, every kiss a promise of what was to come. This time, there would be no interruptions, no reasons to pull back. This time, they would finally surrender to the fire that had been burning between them. This time, they would stop fighting their hearts and start building the love that Richard had seen in them all along. Chapter 5. Gabriel carried Amara through the penthouse with urgency, their mouths fused together in a kiss that felt like coming home and catching fire simultaneously. Her fingers had already loosened his tie, and the silk slithered to the floor as they moved down the hallway toward their bedroom. "Wait," Amara breathed against his lips as they reached the master suite. Gabriel froze, his body screaming with need, but his hands gentle as he set her down. "If you've changed your mind—" "I haven't," her voice was steady. "But I need to tell you something first." Gabriel's chest tightened with sudden fear. "What?" Amara's hands framed his face, her thumbs tracing his cheekbones with infinite tenderness. "I love you," she said simply. "Not because of the arrangement, not because of what you've given Tyler and me, not because Richard thought we should be together. I love you, Gabriel Ashworth, exactly as you are." Gabriel had been prepared for passion, for desire, for the culmination of weeks of building attraction. He hadn't been prepared for love, freely given, with no conditions or expectations attached. "Amara," he said, his voice breaking. "I needed you to know," she continued, "before we crossed this line. I needed you to understand that whatever happens between us now comes from love." Gabriel's hands shook as he cupped her face, staring down at this incredible woman who'd just offered him everything he'd been too afraid to ask for. "I love you too," he said, the words torn from the depths of his soul. "I've been falling in love with you since the moment you threw coffee in my face and walked away. I've been fighting it because I was terrified, because everyone I've ever loved has left, because I didn't think I deserved someone like you." "You deserve everything," Amara said fiercely. "You deserve to be loved completely, without reservation, without fear." Gabriel's mouth found hers again, full of reverence and promise. This wasn't just desire anymore. This was two people choosing each other, claiming each other, surrendering to something bigger than either of them alone. Amara's hands worked at the buttons of his shirt with trembling fingers, and Gabriel groaned as her palms spread across his chest. Her touch was electric, sending heat racing through his entire body. "You're shaking," he observed, stilling her hands with his own. "So are you." Gabriel looked down at their joined hands and realized she was right. For all his experience, all his confidence in the boardroom and the bedroom, Amara had reduced him to trembling need with nothing more than her love and her touch. "I've never felt like this before," he admitted. "Like I might die if I don't have you, like I might die if I do." Amara's smile was soft, understanding. "Then we'll figure it out together." She resumed unbuttoning his shirt, her movements more sure now, and Gabriel let his head fall back as she pushed the fabric off his shoulders. When her lips pressed against the hollow of his throat, he had to brace himself against the wall to keep from falling. "Amara," he groaned. "I know," she whispered against his skin. "I know, baby." The endearment undid him completely. Gabriel's hands found the buttons and zipper of her pantsuit, drawing it down. The fabric pooled at her feet, leaving her in a silk blouse and delicate lace that made his mouth go dry. "You're so beautiful," he said, his voice rough with awe. "So perfect." Amara's cheeks flushed pink, but she didn't look away. "So are you." Gabriel lifted her onto the bed with infinite gentleness, following her down until they were lying face to face in the afternoon light, streaming through the windows. There was no rush now, no desperate urgency. They had time, privacy, and most importantly, the certainty that this was right. Gabriel's fingers traced the delicate lace at the edge of her blouse, marveling at the contrast between the elegant fabric and the warm skin beneath. "Are you sure?" he asked one more time. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." His mouth found hers as his hands worshipped her body with reverent touch, learning every curve, every sensitive spot that made her gasp his name. Amara responded with equal passion, her hands mapping the planes of his chest, the strong muscles of his shoulders, the places that made him groan with need. When they finally came together, it was with a connection that transcended the physical. Gabriel felt something fundamental shift in his chest, like pieces of himself he'd thought were permanently broken clicking back into place. Amara's eyes never left his, and he could see his own wonder reflected there, his own disbelief that something this perfect could exist. "I love you," she whispered as they moved together in perfect harmony. "I love you too," Gabriel replied, the words easier now, natural as breathing. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the rumpled sheets, Gabriel's arm around Amara as she traced patterns on his chest. The afternoon light had softened to gold, and Gabriel felt a peace he'd never experienced before. "What happens now?" Amara asked quietly. "Now we build something real," Gabriel said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Tyler will be home soon." Gabriel's smile was soft, content. "Good. I want to help him with his volcano project. I want to hear about his day. I want to be here for all of it." Amara lifted her head to look at him, and Gabriel saw tears of happiness in her eyes. "He's going to be so excited. He's been asking me for weeks if you were going to stay." "What did you tell him?" "That I hoped so." Amara's voice was soft. Gabriel rolled them over, caging her beneath him with gentle strength. "Your son is brilliant," he said, nipping at her lower lip. "And so is his mother." "Flatterer," Amara accused, but she was smiling. "Truth-teller," Gabriel corrected, settling more fully against her. "I plan to spend the rest of our marriage proving just how brilliant you both are." The rest of our marriage. The words hung between them, full of promise and possibility. They'd started this arrangement with an 18-month deadline, but Gabriel couldn't imagine an ending anymore. He could only see a future filled with Tyler's laughter, Amara's love, and the family they were building together. "Gabriel?" Amara's voice was hesitant. "What is it, sweetheart?" "There's something I need to tell you, something I realized today, watching you in that boardroom." Gabriel propped himself up on his elbow, giving her his full attention. "What?" Amara's hands framed his face, her expression serious. "You don't have to take care of everyone anymore. You don't have to be responsible for every problem, every solution, every person in your life." The words hit deeper than Gabriel had expected. "Amara, I see you," she continued softly. I see how you've spent your whole adult life trying to protect everyone around you because you couldn't protect your mother. But Gabriel, love isn't about protection. It's about partnership. It's about facing things together. Gabriel felt something crack open in his chest, years of control finally giving way to vulnerability. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. I don't know how to need people without trying to control the outcome. Then we'll learn together, Amara said simply. We'll make mistakes. We'll figure it out as we go, but we'll do it together. Gabriel buried his face in her neck, overwhelmed by the gift she was offering him, not just her love, but her partnership, her willingness to build something with him instead of letting him build something for her. I love you, he said against her throat. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good, Amara said, her arms tightening around him. Terror means it matters. They might have stayed there forever, wrapped in each other in the golden afternoon light, but the sound of the front door opening announced Tyler's return from school. Mom? Gabriel? Tyler's voice carried down the hallway. I'm home. Gabriel and Amara looked at each other and burst into quiet laughter. Welcome to family life, Amara said, pressing a quick kiss to his lips. I wouldn't have it any other way, Gabriel replied, already reaching for his clothes. They dressed quickly, stealing kisses and touches as they made themselves presentable. Gabriel's tie was long gone, his hair thoroughly mussed, but the happiness radiating from both of them would have been impossible to hide. Tyler was in the kitchen with Mrs. Margot when they emerged, chattering excitedly about his day and displaying a perfect math test with obvious pride. Gabriel, look, Tyler held up the test paper. I got every problem right, even the hard ones. That's incredible, Gabriel said, ruffling Tyler's hair with genuine pride. Your mom's going to be so proud of you. She already said she's proud, Tyler said, but it's better when you're both proud together. The innocent observation hit Gabriel square in the chest. Tyler had been watching them, had been hoping for exactly what was happening right now. His parents together, proud of him together, functioning as a real family. We are proud together, Gabriel said, his arms settling naturally around Amara's waist. We're proud of you, and we're proud to be your parents. Tyler's face lit up like the sun. Really? Both of you? Both of us, Amara confirmed, her voice thick with emotion. Tyler launched himself at them both, wrapping his arms around their waists in an enthusiastic hug that nearly knocked them over. Gabriel felt his heart expand to accommodate this new reality, not just love for Amara, but love for Tyler, love for the family they'd created together. Can we work on my volcano now? Tyler asked, bouncing slightly with excitement. I want to make it the best one in the whole class. Absolutely, Gabriel said. But first I have something to show you, both of you. Gabriel led them to the elevator, then up one more floor, to a door Amara had never seen opened. When Gabriel unlocked it and pushed it wide, she gasped. The rooftop had been transformed into a garden paradise. Jasmine vines climbed trellises along the walls, their white flowers releasing sweet fragrance into the evening air. Fairy lights twinkled between the plants, and comfortable seating areas were scattered throughout the space. At the center was a small greenhouse, its glass walls reflecting the setting sun. When did you do this? Amara asked, stunned. I've been working on it for weeks, Gabriel admitted. I remembered how you always talked about wanting a garden, about missing the flowers from your grandmother's house. I hoped we might share it together. Tyler raced around the space, exclaiming over the various plants and flowers, but Amara stood frozen by the sheer thoughtfulness of the gesture. Gabriel had been planning this for weeks, had been thinking about her happiness, her dreams, her connection to growing things. Gabriel, she whispered, tears pricking her eyes. Do you like it? Instead of answering with words, Amara threw her arms around his neck and kissed him with all the love in her heart. Gabriel lifted her off her feet, spinning her around among the jasmine and fairy lights while Tyler laughed and Mrs. Margot watched from the doorway with obvious satisfaction. This is perfect, Amara said when Gabriel finally set her down. We're perfect. Yes, Gabriel agreed, looking around at his family, Amara glowing with happiness, Tyler exploring his new favorite space, Mrs. Margot beaming like a proud grandmother. We really are. As the sun set over the city, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Gabriel understood what his father had seen all those months ago. This wasn't just about saving a company or securing a future. This was about love in its purest form. Messy, terrifying, absolutely worth every risk. Richard had given them the greatest gift imaginable, each other. And Gabriel intended to spend the rest of his life being worthy of that gift. "Come on," Tyler called from the greenhouse. "Gabriel, you have to see this. Mom, there are actual tomatoes growing in here." Gabriel took Amara's hand, intertwining their fingers as they followed Tyler deeper into the garden. Tomorrow there would be board meetings and business decisions and all the complexities of their public life. But tonight, there was just this: their family, their love, and the future they were building together, one perfect moment at a time. The 18-month deadline in their original arrangement suddenly seemed laughable. Gabriel couldn't imagine 18 months, let alone 18 years, being enough time to love Amara the way she deserved to be loved, but they had a lifetime to figure it out, and Gabriel had never been more excited about anything in his life. Chapter 6. The call came at 3 a.m, shattering the peaceful silence of the penthouse with its shrill urgency. Gabriel was instantly awake, his body conditioned by years of corporate emergencies to respond to crisis calls. But when he saw the school's number on his phone, ice flooded his veins. "Mr. Ashworth, this is Principal Matthews at Whitmore Academy. I'm calling about Tyler." Gabriel was already out of bed, reaching for clothes. "What happened? Is he hurt?" "He collapsed during the overnight science camp. The paramedics are taking him to Children's Hospital. His blood sugar dropped dangerously low, and he's been unconscious for several minutes." The words hit Gabriel like physical blows. Unconscious, blood sugar, Children's Hospital. His hands shook as he pulled on pants, his mind racing through everything he knew about diabetic emergencies. "We're on our way," Gabriel said, then ended the call and rushed to wake Amara. She was already stirring, some maternal instinct alerting her to crisis even in sleep. "Gabriel? What's wrong?" "Tyler's at the hospital. Diabetic emergency." Gabriel kept his voice calm, but inside, he was panicked. "We need to go now." Amara's face went white, but she moved with the efficiency of someone who'd lived with this fear for years. She was dressed and ready in under 2 minutes, her hands steady despite the terror in her eyes. The drive to Children's Hospital was a blur of city lights and silence. Gabriel pushed the speed limit while Amara sat rigid in the passenger seat, her knuckles white where she gripped her purse. "He's going to be okay," Gabriel said, though he wasn't sure if he was trying to convince Amara or himself. "You don't know that." Amara's voice was flat, hollow. "You don't understand what this is like, Gabriel. You don't understand how quickly everything can go wrong." The words stung, but Gabriel pushed down his own fear to focus on hers. "You're right. I don't understand. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Amara turned to look at him, and Gabriel saw something vulnerable and grateful flicker in her expression. The emergency room was a chaos of bright lights and urgent voices. Gabriel took charge immediately, his authority cutting through red tape and delays efficiently. Within minutes, they were being led to Tyler's room by a harried-looking resident. Gabriel's chest tightened when he saw Tyler lying so still in the hospital bed, an IV line snaking from his small arm, monitors beeping steadily around him. He looked impossibly young, impossibly fragile, and Gabriel felt something primal and protective surge through him. "Tyler," Amara whispered, rushing to his bedside. Dr. Sarah Kim, the attending physician, was young but competent, her expression serious as she explained Tyler's condition. "He's stable now, but it was a severe hypoglycemic episode. His blood sugar dropped to dangerous levels, likely triggered by increased activity at the science camp combined with inadequate monitoring of his insulin levels." "But he's going to be okay?" Gabriel asked, his voice rougher than intended. "He should make a full recovery, but we want to keep him for observation. Episodes like this can be unpredictable, and we need to make sure his levels stabilize completely." Amara nodded, but Gabriel could see her hands shaking as she smoothed Tyler's hair back from his forehead. She'd been here before, he realized. She'd sat in hospital rooms watching her son fight for stability, probably alone, probably terrified. Not anymore. Gabriel moved to stand behind Amara's chair, his hands settling on her shoulders in a gesture meant to anchor them both. What do we need to do? What can we do to help? Dr. Kim outlined the treatment plan, the monitoring protocols, the signs to watch for. Gabriel listened with the same intense focus he brought to board meetings, filing away every detail, every instruction, every possible complication. I'll have the nurse bring some pillows and blankets, Dr. Kim said. I know you'll want to stay with him. After the doctor left, Gabriel looked around the small room and made a decision. I'm going to make some calls, get us a private suite, bring in specialists. No, Amara's voice was quiet but firm. No specialists, no private rooms. Gabriel frowned. Amara, I can arrange for the best care. He has the best care. Dr. Kim is excellent, and this hospital has a top-rated pediatric endocrinology program. Amara finally looked up at him, and Gabriel saw years of hard-won knowledge in her eyes. This isn't something money can fix, Gabriel. This is just life with diabetes. Sometimes it goes wrong, no matter how careful you are. The words hit Gabriel like a revelation. For the first time in his adult life, he was facing a problem that couldn't be solved with resources or influence or sheer force of will. Tyler's condition was what it was, and all Gabriel could do was be present for it. I don't know how to help, he admitted, the confession torn from somewhere deep in his chest. Amara's expression softened. You are helping. You're here. You stayed calm when I was falling apart. You got us through the ER chaos. Gabriel sank into the chair beside hers, suddenly exhausted. I was terrified, he said quietly. When I got that call, I've never been that scared in my life. Welcome to parenthood, Amara said with a weak smile. The terror never really goes away. You just learn to function despite it. Gabriel reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. How did you do this alone? All those years, all those emergencies. How did you survive it? I had to. He needed me to be strong, so I was strong. Amara's voice was matter-of-fact, but Gabriel heard the cost behind her words. But I'm not alone anymore, am I? Never again, Gabriel said fiercely. Whatever happens, whatever Tyler needs, we face it together. They settled in for the long wait, taking turns sitting by Tyler's bed, talking quietly to fill the medical silence. Gabriel called Mrs. Margot to explain the situation, fielded texts from Elena offering support, and handled the logistics that Amara was too worried to manage. Around dawn, Tyler's eyes fluttered open. Mom? His voice was weak but alert. Right here, baby. Amara was on her feet instantly, leaning over his bed. How do you feel? I'm tired. Tyler's gaze found Gabriel standing behind Amara. Gabriel, what are you doing here? The question was innocent, but it hit Gabriel with unexpected force. What was he doing here? Tyler wasn't his biological son, wasn't his responsibility in any legal sense, but looking down at this boy who'd become so important to him, Gabriel realized the answer was simple. I'm here because you're my family, Gabriel said quietly, because when something happens to you, it happens to all of us. Tyler's face lit up with a shaky smile that made Gabriel's chest ache. Really? Really. Dr. Kim returned with Tyler's latest test results, which showed significant improvement. His levels are stabilizing beautifully. If this trend continues, we should be able to discharge him this afternoon. Relief flooded through Gabriel so powerfully it made him lightheaded. Tyler was going to be okay. Their family was going to be okay. Can I have pancakes when I get home? Tyler asked hopefully. Mrs. Margot makes the best pancakes. You can have whatever you want, Gabriel said, earning a warning look from Amara about dietary restrictions. Within reason, he amended, and according to your meal plan. Tyler giggled, the sound more beautiful than any music Gabriel had ever heard. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of medical consultations and discharge preparations. Gabriel found himself thrust into the role of Tyler's other parent, making decisions about follow-up care and medication adjustments with Amara. It felt natural, right? Like something he'd been doing for years instead of weeks. By the time they arrived back at the penthouse that afternoon, Tyler was tired but stable. chattering about his science camp adventure and asking when he could go back to school. Mrs. Margot fussed over him with maternal concern, and Gabriel watched the easy way his family surrounded Tyler with love and support. His family. The realization still took his breath away. "Tyler needs to rest," Amara said as Mrs. Margot settled him on the living room sofa with books and games, "but he should be back to normal by tomorrow." Gabriel nodded, but he could see the exhaustion and residual fear in Amara's posture. She'd been strong throughout the crisis, but now that Tyler was safe, the adrenaline was wearing off. "You need to rest too," Gabriel said quietly. "I'm fine." "Amara." Gabriel's voice was gentle but firm. "You haven't slept in 24 hours, and you spent most of that time terrified. You're not fine." She opened her mouth to argue, then seemed to deflate. "I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see him lying in that hospital bed so still and small." Gabriel's heart ached for her. Without a word, he swept her into his arms, carrying her toward their bedroom despite her weak protests. "Gabriel, wait. I should stay with Tyler." "Mrs. Margot is with Tyler. He's safe, he's stable, and he needs his mother to take care of herself too." Gabriel set her down in their bedroom, then guided her to sit on the edge of the bed. With infinite gentleness, he knelt to remove her shoes, his hand steady and sure. "What are you doing?" Amara asked softly. "Taking care of you," Gabriel said simply. He helped her out of her rumpled clothes from the hospital, replacing them with a soft cotton nightgown. Every movement was tender, reverent, focused entirely on her comfort rather than desire. "I was so scared," Amara whispered as Gabriel pulled back the covers. "I know." Gabriel settled beside her, pulling her into his arms. "I was scared too." "You didn't show it. You were so calm, so strong." Gabriel pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Because you needed me to be. Because Tyler needed me to be. But inside, I was falling apart." Amara tilted her head to look at him, and Gabriel saw wonder in her eyes. "You really meant it, didn't you? When you said we're family." Every word. Gabriel's voice was thick with emotion. "Tyler is my son in every way that matters. You're my wife in every way that matters. This is my family, and I will protect it with everything I have." Amara's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of relief and love rather than fear. "I love you," she whispered. "I love you too." Gabriel tightened his arms around her. "Both of you. More than I ever thought possible." "What does it mean to you when someone shows up for your family in a crisis? Share your stories about the people who've stood by you." During the hardest moments, these connections remind us that we're never truly alone. They lay together in the afternoon light, not sleeping, but simply holding each other, processing the terror and relief of the past 24 hours. Gabriel marveled at how much his life had changed in such a short time. "Gabriel," Amara's voice was drowsy, peaceful. Thank you. For being there, for taking charge, for not trying to throw money at a problem that money can't fix." Gabriel smiled against her hair. "Thank you for trusting me with him, with both of you." They dozed together as the afternoon sun painted golden patterns across their bedroom walls. When they woke, it was to the sound of Tyler's laughter drifting from the living room, where Mrs. Margot was apparently regaling him with stories about her own grandchildren. "He sounds good," Gabriel observed. "He sounds like himself again." Amara stretched, then turned in Gabriel's arms to face him fully. "Are you ready for this? For all of it? Because Tyler's diabetes isn't going away. There will be more emergencies, more scary nights, more hospital visits." Gabriel considered the question seriously. A year ago, the prospect of tying his happiness to a child's unpredictable medical condition would have terrified him. Now, looking into Amara's eyes, he felt only certainty. "I'm ready for all of it," he said firmly. "The good days and the bad days, the hospital visits and the science projects, the teenage years and the college applications. I'm ready for forever, Amara." Her smile was radiant, transforming her entire face. "Forever sounds perfect." Gabriel kissed her then, slow and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Tyler's voice called from the living room. "Mom." Gabriel, Mrs. Margot says dinner's ready and she made my favorite soup. Coming, Amara called back, but Gabriel caught her hand as she started to rise. Amara? Yes? The 18 months in our original arrangement. What about them? Gabriel's smile was soft, certain. I want to renegotiate the terms. Amara's eyebrows rose. Oh? What terms did you have in mind? Lifetime contract, no expiration date, no option to renew because there won't be any need. This is permanent. Amara's laughter was pure joy. I accept your terms, Mr. Ashworth. Good, Gabriel said, pulling her down for another kiss, because I plan to spend the rest of my life proving I'm worth the investment. Chapter 7. 3 weeks after Tyler's hospital scare, Gabriel stood in his father's old study, staring at the mahogany desk where this entire journey had begun. The room had always felt like a shrine to Richard's memory, but tonight it felt different. Warm, welcoming, like a space where new memories could be made alongside the old ones. The emergency board meeting Pierce had called for 9 o'clock the next morning was his final gambit, Gabriel knew. After his humiliating defeat weeks ago, Pierce had been quietly gathering support, spreading whispers about Gabriel's distracted leadership and the suspicious circumstances of his marriage. Tomorrow, Pierce would make his last play for control of Ashworth Enterprises. Gabriel wasn't worried about the business outcome. His position was secure, his performance unassailable. But something about facing this final battle in his father's space, with his father's portrait watching from the wall, felt like completing a circle that had been 16 years in the making. You're brooding again. Gabriel turned to find Amara in the doorway, breathtaking in a silk robe that skimmed her curves and reminded him of the night everything had changed between them. Tyler was asleep, Mrs. Margot had retired to her quarters, and the penthouse hummed with the peaceful energy of a family settled for the night. Just thinking, Gabriel said, opening his arms to welcome her into the room that had once felt like a mausoleum and now felt like the heart of their home. Amara moved into his embrace naturally, her back settling against his chest as they both looked at Richard's portrait. About tomorrow? About how we got here. About what my father would think of the choices I've made. Amara's hands covered his where they rested around her waist. I think he'd be proud. I think he'd be happy to see his son finally understanding what really matters. Gabriel pressed a kiss to her temple, breathing in the familiar scent of her shampoo. Pierce is going to make one last attempt tomorrow. He's been building coalition for weeks, claiming my personal life is affecting my judgment. And is it? Amara's voice held a teasing note that made Gabriel smile. Absolutely. But not in the way Pierce thinks. Gabriel tightened his arms around her. My judgment has never been clearer, and my priorities have never been more focused. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Amara spoke again. Gabriel, there's something I need to tell you. Something in her tone made Gabriel turn her in his arms, studying her face. What is it? I've been thinking about the original timeline, the 18 months we agreed to. Gabriel's chest tightened with sudden fear. Amara. We're coming up on month 6, she continued, her voice steady but her eyes uncertain, and I keep wondering, what if you change your mind? What if this stops feeling worth the complications? What if... Gabriel silenced her, with a kiss, pouring every ounce of love and certainty he possessed into the contact. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Listen to me very carefully, Gabriel said, his hands framing her face. There is no timeline anymore. There is no arrangement. There is no contract or obligation or business deal. There is only this, you, me, and Tyler, our family. There is only love, Amara, real, permanent, unshakable love. Tears gathered in her eyes. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real, that someone like you could love someone like me. Someone like you? Gabriel's voice was fierce with indignation. You mean someone brilliant, strong, compassionate, beautiful? Someone who raised an incredible kid while working 2 jobs and never complained? Someone who defended our marriage in front of a hostile board like a lioness protecting her cubs? Yeah, Gabriel, I'm not finished. His thumbs traced her cheekbones with infinite gentleness. You want to know what I see when I look at you? I see the woman who threw coffee in my face when I insulted her integrity. I see the mother who stayed calm during Tyler's medical crisis while I was falling apart. I see the partner who stands beside me in every fight, who makes me better than I ever thought I could be. Amara's tears were flowing freely now. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. Good, Gabriel said softly. Fear means it matters. Fear means you understand what we have is worth protecting. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent. When they separated, Gabriel rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow, I'm going to end Pierce's threat once and for all, he said quietly. And then I'm going to do something I should have done weeks ago. What? Gabriel's smile was soft, certain. I'm going to ask you to marry me. Really marry me. Not because of some arrangement or timeline, but because I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life. Because I want to help Tyler with his homework until he's too old to need it. Because I want to grow old with you in that rooftop garden, watching our grandchildren play among the jasmine. Amara's breath caught. Gabriel, not tonight, he said quickly. Tomorrow, after I've cleared away the last of the old business, I want to propose to you with nothing hanging over us, no complications or drama, just us and the future we're choosing together. The promise hung between them like starlight, beautiful and precious and real. The emergency board meeting convened at exactly 9 o'clock in the marble and mahogany splendor of Ashworth Enterprises' executive conference room. Gabriel sat at the head of the table with Amara beside him, both dressed for battle in their finest armor, his navy suit and her charcoal dress complementing each other perfectly. Pierce had gathered his supporters with impressive efficiency. Nearly half the board looked ready to at least hear his arguments, while the other half appeared skeptical but open-minded. Only Charles Pemberton looked openly hostile to Pierce's machinations. Thank you all for coming, Pierce began, his voice carrying false gravitas. I've called this meeting because the future of Ashworth Enterprises hangs in the balance. Gabriel kept his expression neutral, but beside him, he felt Amara's tension. Her hand found his under the table, a touch meant to anchor them both. For months, I've been raising concerns about Gabriel's leadership, Pierce continued, his rushed marriage, his distracted decision-making, his prioritization of his personal life over his responsibility to the company. Specific examples? Charles interrupted coolly. Pierce smiled like a shark scenting blood. The hasty wedding to someone completely outside our social and business circles, the delegation of key decisions to subordinates while he focuses on domestic arrangements, the obvious strain of managing a ready-made family while running a complex corporation. Gabriel felt Amara's fingers tighten around his, and something protective and fierce surged through his chest. Furthermore, Pierce pressed on, there are questions about the legitimacy of this marriage itself. Questions about whether it was entered into for the right reasons or purely to satisfy Richard's will requirements. The insult was calculated, designed to provoke Gabriel into an emotional response that would prove Pierce's point about distracted leadership. Instead, Gabriel stood slowly, his movement controlled and deliberate. Mr. Pierce, Gabriel said, his voice carrying absolute authority, you've made a serious miscalculation. Have I? You have. Gabriel moved to the presentation screen, calling up documents he'd prepared for exactly this moment. You assume that my marriage has weakened my focus on this company. In reality, it's given me clarity I never had before. Financial projections filled the screen. Profits, expansion plans, market dominance statistics that made several board members sit up straighter. Company performance has increased 23% since my marriage, Gabriel continued. Client satisfaction is at an all-time high. We've secured 3 major contracts that our competitors couldn't touch. Financial performance isn't everything, Pierce started. You're right, Gabriel cut him off. It's not. Leadership is about vision, about understanding what really matters, about making decisions that protect not just profits, but people. Gabriel clicked to the next slide, showing the expanded employee benefits package he'd implemented, the charitable foundation initiatives, the family-friendly policies that had reduced turnover by 30%. My marriage didn't distract me from this company, Gabriel said, his gaze sweeping the room. It reminded me why this company matters. It's not about accumulating wealth, it's about creating something meaningful, something that makes people's lives better. He turned to face Pierce directly. As for the legitimacy of my marriage, let me make something very clear. I married Amara because I love her, because she's the strongest, most remarkable woman I've ever known, because she and her son make my life complete in ways I never thought possible. Amara's breath caught audibly, and Gabriel saw tears gathering in her eyes. Richard's will may have brought us together, Gabriel continued, but what we've built since then is entirely our choice. Our love is real. Our family is real. And anyone who suggests otherwise is welcome to challenge me on it. The threat was quiet, but unmistakable. Pierce's face had gone white with rage. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Pierce said desperately. Emotional decision-making, personal priorities superseding corporate. Mr. Pierce. Amara's voice cut through his bluster like a blade. She stood, her presence commanding immediate attention from everyone in the room. You want to know what real leadership looks like? She asked, her gaze moving around the table. It looks like someone who understands that business success means nothing if you don't have people to share it with. It looks like someone who can be both a corporate executive and a devoted husband and father. It looks like Gabriel. The room was dead silent. Even Pierce seemed stunned by the passionate eloquence of her defense. Furthermore, Amara said, her voice growing stronger, I find it deeply offensive that you're questioning the authenticity of our marriage. Gabriel and I are partners in every sense of the word. We make decisions together, support each other through challenges, and build something greater than either of us could create alone. If that threatens you, Mr. Pierce, perhaps you should examine why. Gabriel had never been more proud of anyone in his life. Amara was magnificent, fierce, elegant, absolutely devastating in her defense of their family. Thank you, darling, Gabriel said softly, then turned back to Pierce. Now, since you've had your say, let me finish mine. Gabriel clicked to his final slide, a comprehensive analysis of Pierce's own business practices, his pattern of corporate raiders, his history of destroying companies for personal profit. This isn't about my marriage or my leadership, Gabriel said, his voice cold as winter. This is about Pierce's failed attempt to orchestrate a hostile takeover. This is about a man who spent his career dismantling successful companies for personal profit, trying one last desperate play for control. The evidence was damning, comprehensive, and absolutely irrefutable. Board members who'd seemed sympathetic to Pierce now looked disgusted. Charles Pemberton stood slowly. I think we've heard enough, he said. I move that this board reaffirm our complete confidence in Gabriel's leadership and formally censure Mr. Pierce for this inappropriate attack on his personal life. The motion was seconded immediately and carried by unanimous vote of everyone except Pierce and his two remaining allies. Pierce gathered his papers with shaking hands, his face mottled with humiliation and rage. This isn't over, Gabriel. Yes, Gabriel said quietly. It is. As Pierce stormed from the room, the remaining board members surrounded Gabriel and Amara with congratulations and genuine warmth. The threat that had hung over them for months was finally, definitively ended. But Gabriel barely heard the congratulations. His attention was focused entirely on Amara, on the woman who'd just defended their love with such passion and eloquence that she'd rendered an entire boardroom speechless. Have you ever had someone defend your relationship against unfair criticism? Share your stories about standing together against judgment. These moments of unity make love even stronger. That was incredible, Gabriel said quietly, as the room finally emptied, leaving them alone among the mahogany and marble that had witnessed so many corporate battles. Gabriel cupped her face in his hands, staring down at this remarkable woman who'd just proved once again why he'd fallen so completely in love with her. Amara Lewis Ashworth, he said softly. Yes? Will you marry me? She blinked in surprise. Gabriel, we're already married. No, he said, his smile growing wider. We had a civil ceremony to satisfy legal requirements. I'm asking if you'll marry me because you want to spend the rest of your life with me. I'm asking if you'll marry me because you love me the way I love you, completely, permanently, with everything we have." Amara's tears were flowing freely now, but her smile was radiant. "Are you proposing to me in a boardroom?" "I'm proposing to you in the place where we first fought for each other," Gabriel corrected, "where we first realized that what we had was worth defending, where we just proved that together we're unstoppable." "Gabriel Ashworth," Amara said, her voice thick with emotion, "I thought you'd never ask." "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to everything. Yes to real marriage, yes to forever, yes to growing old and watching our grandchildren play among the jasmine rooftop garden." Gabriel kissed her then, in the boardroom where they'd just defeated their last enemy, surrounded by the ghosts of corporate battles and the promise of a future built on love rather than obligation. When they broke apart, both were laughing and crying at the same time. "I love you," Gabriel said against her lips. "I love you too," Amara replied. "Now take me home to our son so we can tell him he's about to have the wedding of the century." "Our son," Gabriel repeated, the words still capable of making his chest tight with emotion. As they left the boardroom hand in hand, Gabriel thought about Richard's final gift one more time. His father hadn't just given them each other, he'd given them the chance to become better versions of themselves. Gabriel was no longer the isolated executive who used money to solve every problem. Amara was no longer the struggling single mother who couldn't believe she deserved happiness. They were partners, lovers, parents, a family forged by choice and strengthened by every challenge they'd faced together. The 18-month arrangement was officially dead. In its place was something infinitely more precious, a love story that would last forever, a marriage built on truth rather than convenience, and a future full of possibility. Richard would have been proud. Gabriel was certain of that. But more importantly, Gabriel was finally completely happy. And he intended to spend the rest of his life ensuring that Amara and Tyler were just as happy as he was. Some contracts, Gabriel thought as they stepped into the elevator that would take them home to their son, were worth renegotiating for eternity. And so, dear friends, another chapter closes in our diary of love. Gabriel and Amara's story began with grief and suspicion, with walls built high and hearts locked tight against the possibility of pain. But sometimes, the greatest gifts come disguised as the greatest challenges. Sometimes, love finds us not when we're looking for it, but when we need it most. Richard Ashworth's final act of love gave his son and Amara more than money or security. He gave them each other. He saw what they were too afraid to see, that some souls are meant to find each other, no matter how unlikely the circumstances. What moments in this story touched your heart the most? Have you ever had to choose between what felt safe and what felt real? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories of courage and love inspire our entire Dear Love Diaries community. Don't forget to subscribe for more passionate stories that prove the heart knows no boundaries, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a new chapter in our diary of love. Tomorrow brings another story of souls finding their way to each other against all odds, and we can't wait to share it with you. Until next time, remember that love isn't about perfect circumstances or easy choices. It's about finding someone who makes you braver, kinder, and more yourself than you ever thought possible. It's about taking the leap, trusting the fall, and discovering that sometimes the greatest risks lead to the greatest rewards. Keep believing in love, dear hearts. Keep believing in the magic of two souls choosing each other, again and again, through every storm and every sunrise. This is Dear Love Diaries, where every ending is really just a beautiful beginning.